Today on Meet the Mythmakers, we interview the characters of the Greek myth Orpheus and Eurydice. The story of a young man, Orpheus, who goes down to the underworld, the land of the dead. Orpheus, that was a pretty scary thing to do. Why would you do such a thing?
Well, it began with my mother, Calliope, when she gave me the extraordinary gift of a singing voice.
Calliope, how could you give your son the gift of an extraordinary singing voice?
I'm the muse of the beautiful voice, and my role is to inspire some people with extraordinary voices. Naturally, I wanted my son, Orpheus, to have the most wonderful voice of all.
And my father, Apollo, god of light and music. When I was a young man, he gave me a lyre.
I gave him a lyre to strum and make his music as bright and scintillating as the sun.
But Orpheus, what does your gift of music have to do with your trip to the underworld?
My music got so good that people would stop whatever they were doing to listen. Men stopped digging, women stopped gathering grapes, and children stopped skipping and tossing ball.
My son's music was so exciting that animals stopped their activities to and froze in their tracks to listen.
Yes, the brooks babbled happily. Oak trees wrenched themselves up by the roots, and rocks rolled over and humped.
Pretty astounding!
But most importantly, my music attracted the wood nymph Eurydice to me.
Guys, how did Orpheus' music affect you?
I danced along the trees, and then one day I heard the most magical music. From then on, I followed Orpheus and his music wherever he went.
The day I saw Eurydice, I knew we belonged together.
So you got married.
Yes, and we invited Hymen, the god of marriage, to perform the ceremony.
What's the name? One before wedding?
No! I thought it would be, but I could not smile or bless the wedding. I could not get my wedding torch to light.
That sounds as if there was a disaster in the wind. Hermes, you are the messaging god who escorts dead souls to the underworld.
Yes, and I gently closed Eurydice's eyes and took her to Elysian Fields, a place in the underworld where the good and virtuous people go.
Orpheus, what was your reaction to the death of your bride?
This was the most terrible thing that could happen. It seemed impossible that such a gentle and innocent person as Eurydice should be taken at such a young age to the land of the dead. I put down my lyre. I was unable to make music anymore.
What did you do to cope with your profound loss?
I decided to do what no person has ever done before. I desired to go down to the land of the dead and beg King Hades to let me bring my wife back to the land of the living.
How did you find your way down there?
Trees pointed the way. First down, a cave that went down to the river Styx that divides the land of the living from the land of the dead.
Charon, you only ferry dead souls across the river Styx to the underworld. Why would you let Orpheus, a living soul, go across in your boat?
At first, I refused. Orpheus certainly was not dead, and he did not have the required coin under his tongue to pay me for the trip. But then, he picked up his lyre and played the most beautiful boating song I've ever heard, and then I took him immediately across.
Orpheus, did you get to the land of the dead?
I did, but first I had to get past Cerberus, the vicious three-headed dog who guarded the gate's entrance to the underworld.
Cerberus, tell us about it.
When I saw Orpheus, I gnashed every tooth in my 3 heads.
I bared my claws and growled fiercely.
I was just about to tear him apart when suddenly he played the most soothing lullaby. I was transfixed and fell asleep immediately. I'm condemned to be continuously tantalized by extreme hunger and thirst. I stand in a pool of water. Above me is a vine with juicy grapes. I'm dying of hunger and dying of thirst, but every time I lean over to drink some water, the pool recedes. Each time I reach to grasp the grapes, the vine jumps away.
Orpheus, who else did you pass?
The next sinner was Sisyphus!
Sisyphus, what was your crime?
I deceived Zeus, the king of the gods, by telling one of his secrets.
The last were the depressed daughters of the king Danaus.
Eldest daughter of King Darius, what did you and your sisters do?
We killed our husbands on our wedding night, and our punishment is to carry water in containers that have no bottoms.
Ladies, how did you respond?
At first, I refused adamantly. No dead person had ever been allowed to return to the land of the living. But then, Orpheus had played the most beautiful song of his lyre.
I wept and begged my husband to let Eurydice return to the world above with her husband, Orpheus. And Hades changed his mind.
Yes, the music and the tears of my wife moved me. But I told Orpheus that Eurydice could return with him to the land of the living, but she must follow behind him, and he must not turn back and look at her until they both reach the world above.
It seemed an easy thing to do.
Was it easy?
At first, I was confident that Eurydice was following me, but just as I stepped into the land of the living, I wanted to make sure she was there. I turned for one look, but it was too early, and she slipped away and vanished from me.
I felt as if I was being pulled back by 100 hands. All I could say left was farewell.
I was now sadder than I'd ever been before. I tried to return to the land of the dead to get Eurydice, but I could not. I laid aside my lyre forever. I put my head down and died in hope of reuniting with my bride in the land of the dead.
Now that Orpheus was dead, I closed his eyes and escorted him to his bride in the Elysian fields. There they were united.
That was quite a story. At last, the couple were able to be together in the Elysian fields, where the good and virtuous dead souls live in joy and harmony forevermore. Hades, how did you respond?
At first, I refused
Alex!
Mama drama, why you gotta take so long? Why you gotta be so stop?